Hey guys, it's Vicky, and today I'm here to share with you my wrap up for May. Yeah, reading in May was interesting. You know, I felt like during the month it was slow going, and I felt like I wasn't getting anything read. And I mean, I didn't finish my first book of the month until the 7th, which was kind of weird. But now that I'm looking, I actually did read, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 books. 3 of them, right? 3 of them were audiobooks. So yeah, I mean, it wasn't a horrible month, but it just felt slow and I felt a little slumpy. And I think part of the reason for that, if you guys care to know, is I just noticed that starting in April, I didn't feel like I was having as much time to read, and that's because we're shifting into summer, so there's a lot more stuff to do outside in terms of like yard work and whatnot, and so that was taking up some time. And then I've also started to try to exercise every day for at least 30 minutes, basically for my mental health, because I find that exercise just really helps me mentally, and I just kind of needed that time. So because I'm exercising now pretty much on a daily basis, that cuts into, that's 30 minutes to, you know, an hour sometimes of reading time that I no longer have. So it's been kind of an adjustment, but it's necessary for me to do that right now. I just feel in my body that I need to be moving and doing some sort of physical exercise just to help with my mind. And so yeah, it's a thing, and I'm starting to adjust to it now. It's definitely become a part of my routine, so things are leveling out now. So yes, I read some books in May. There was another reason that I felt a little slumpy, and it's because of one of the books I was reading, and can you guess what it was? I bet you can. And when I get to that one, I'll tell ya. But yeah, let's get into the wrap up. So the first book that I completed in May was one I actually listened to on audio, and that is Good Neighbors by Sarah Langan. And this is I guess it's sort of a thriller, kind of mystery, social commentary for sure, sort of book that deals with this little neighborhood, Maple Street on Long Island. And it's this idyllic, perfect sort of neighborhood, and I say that with quotes because we all know that doesn't exist. And this new family moves into town, the Wilds, and they are not like everybody else, and they sort of shake things up. And then this sinkhole appears near the street, and a tragedy occurs as a result of this sinkhole coming in, and then basically the neighborhood just completely turns on the Wild family and craziness ensues. And so it's very much a book about mob mentality and how people can really just take one little thing and it blows up into this big lie. How rumors spread and how things are never really quite how they seem on the surface. And there's also a lot of talk in here about the environment, because this book takes place in 2027, and at that point the planet is in really big trouble, and that's why this sinkhole has happened, is because of climate change and the negative effects that it has had on our planet. So it talks about that, and like I think I mentioned when I said I was going to be reading this book when I hauled it, it gives a huge nod to this fantastic Twilight Zone episode called The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street, which also deals with the same themes of like mob mentality and panic and rumor spreading and everything like that. And so this book definitely gives a nod to that episode, which I really, really liked. So I really appreciated the themes and whatnot going on in this book, the themes explored. However, there was a huge chunk in the middle where I was kind of bored, and the only thing that kind of kept me going was that in the beginning of the book, you know that some sort of murder occurs, and it's called the Maple Street Murders. And it's alluded to through various media things in the book, like newspaper articles and interviews, books that were written about this murder. And so that sort of kept me going, where I wanted to know who was murdered and why and what happened. That was really the driving force, because like I said, a big chunk in the middle was pretty slow and I was kind of getting bored. And so, yeah, it was a little bit slow in that regard, and the characters weren't super engaging for me. I wouldn't say they were unlikable. Some of them were, of course, but I wasn't super connected to any of them. So I think that also was a reason why I felt a little bit slumpy in the middle of this book, but I did continue it, and the ending ended up being quite shocking and sad and disturbing. But I didn't love this like I thought I would. And like I said, there were definitely things I appreciated and themes I appreciated, but overall this book didn't wow me or anything. And I gave it 3 stars. The next book I completed in May was one of my 5-star predictions from last round, and that is Revolutionary Road by Richard Yates. And I actually already reviewed this in my 5-star prediction wrap-up. And so yeah, I'm not going to talk about it here because I don't need to repeat myself. And I also did a Flicks and Lit because I went ahead and watched the movie after finishing the book. So if you want to check that out as well, go ahead. But overall, this book was okay. There were things I liked about it, things I didn't, and I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. If you want my full thoughts, go check out my 5-star prediction wrap-up. The next book that I completed in May was another audiobook, and this one I got from my library. I had put it on hold months ago, and it was finally my turn, so it was a nice little surprise, and that is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. And this one is pretty popular right now. I've noticed a lot of people reading it, and so I was really excited to get to it. And it deals with our main character named Nora, who is going through some stuff in life. She is not happy. She feels that she has a lot of regrets in her life, and after having a particularly bad day, she decides to commit suicide. So when she does the act, though, she ends up at this library. And what it kind of is this sort of in-between place where you can go, and it's different for everybody. So for everyone, it's not necessarily a library, but for Nora, it's a library. And what it is you have this opportunity to live out your other lives. Had you made different decisions or whatnot. So basically she has thousands, maybe even millions of different lives that she could have lived. And what she could basically do is kind of dip into those lives and see how they are. And if she gets into one where she really truly feels happy, like, okay, this was the life I was supposed to have, she can go and live it. And so the whole book is her basically dipping in and out of these lives, you know, various decisions that she made, regrets that she had, where she can go back and live those lives if she had made a different choice. So for example, if she had made a different career choice, or if she had, you know, married that guy, or if she had moved to Australia, or if she had, you know, I don't know, gone on that date, blah, 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 all different sorts of opportunities and chances. And so it was really fun to see Nora go through all these different lives. And it obviously, as you're reading it, it kind of makes you reflect on your own life and think, I wonder how different my life would be if I had made this choice, if I had gone to this school instead of that school, or done this career instead of that career, or, you know, whatever. And so it's a cool book because it does make you think about your own life. And it was very entertaining. I was very interested in the story, and I loved the audiobook because Carey Mulligan was the narrator, and her voice is amazing. It's amazing. And so I just loved listening to her narration. And the only thing I guess I had, this would have probably been a 5-star book, except the ending was a little bit predictable and a little bit self-helpy in the end. And so I felt a little bit, it felt a little bit cheesy, I guess. And so that kind of knocked it down a little bit for me, so that it was a 4-star book. But I really, really did enjoy this. It was, like I said, just a really cool story, one that really makes you think. And like I said, highly recommend the audiobook because Carey Mulligan is awesome. So yeah, 4 stars, really enjoyed it. Next up, I completed a middle grade book with Leia. This is one that we had been reading at night for a while, and so I wanted to mention it here. It is called Lightning Girl by Alicia Dixon, and this is about a young girl named Aurora who discovers that she has superpowers. And so in that her mother also secretly has been living kind of a double life and is secretly a superhero as well. And so she's kind of like learning to embrace her powers and to basically become a superhero like her mom. And this book was really fun. Leia and I really enjoyed it. The characters were a lot of fun because you meet Aurora, her siblings, and a group of friends that she has at school. And it was a cute story. It was cute, and I really liked it. One of the things I really liked about this was, first of all, that it has some cute illustrations throughout. Let me see if I can find a cute one to show you. But so it has like these cute kind of illustrations as you're reading, which is fun and kind of breaks things up. But also in this book, Aurora's parents are having difficulties, and so it deals with parents that are separating or divorcing. And I think it's important to have those kinds of stories for middle grade readers because a lot of kids, that is their reality. And I think it's important for them to see those kinds of families and that kind of life situation in the books they read. So I really liked that too. And I guess this is there is a sequel to this, which I think we might pick up, I don't know, because we did really enjoy this. It was fun. It was a cool story because in the end, something happens and Aurora has to kind of like save the day. And yeah, it had some great characters and some great themes just about like loving yourself and, having self-confidence and everything. So all the things that you want young readers to read about, especially young girls. And so yeah, we really liked this, and we gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Next up, I read a book for my vlog that I did this month. I did a try a chapter vlog, which was really fun. I took 3 books from my TBR and read the first chapter of them, and then picked a book and read the book and vlogged it. So for that, I read The Body Lies by Joe Baker. And so I'm not going to fully review this here because I reviewed it in the vlog at the end. So if you want my full thoughts, go check out that vlog. But basically, I enjoyed this. I thought the writing was good, but I feel like it was mismarketed a little bit. It's not really to me, it wasn't very suspenseful or very thrillerish, which is kind of what it was marketed as. It was definitely more literary and had a twist in the plot that was very unexpected, that really changed the trajectory of the story. So it was good, but not what I was expecting. So there was that. So yeah, I enjoyed this, but it was just a 3-star read. So next up, I have another audiobook, again, one that I'd put on hold at my library a long time ago, and surprise, it came up. So I was very excited to listen to it. It's a nonfiction book. It is called Mediocre, The Dangerous Legacy of White Male America by Ijoma Iluo, I believe is how you pronounce the name. I apologize if I got that wrong. And this is basically a nonfiction book about how white male supremacy has dominated America forever, and how this sort of system has been detrimental to BIPOC communities, but also to even white males. And she kind of shows you how by giving you like a history and giving you sort of anecdotal stories from throughout history. So she goes back to even like Buffalo Bill, all the way to present day like Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders, and like kind of all these different things in between, and how these people and these events have, shown the point that this is not a beneficial way to run a society. And what I really liked about this book was the weigh that, it was very well researched because again, there's a lot of history in this book, a lot of anecdotal stories, so you can tell that the author really did her research, and not only that, compressed it into I think this book is under 300 pages if I'm correct. So she gives you all this history, but in a short amount of time, and so it was very informative and digestible, but also just you learned a lot, and it was very approachable. And so I really loved the formatting and the editing of this book, because I think it would be very easy to let that get very long-winded and it becomes a very big chunky book, and somehow it's not. So it was very interesting. My favorite section, I think, of this book is where she talks about the workplace and how in a lot of your big deal companies, they're typically run by white men, and how some of those qualities that you will see in a boss, let's say, a white male boss, things like being very, very brisk and very demanding and kind of harsh, are things that are sort of revered in a corporate setting when it's a white dude. But if it's, let's say, a white woman or even someone who is not white and not a man, those qualities are looked at negatively, even though they're the exact same qualities. It's not a white dude doing it. And just sort of stuff like that. I found that whole section really, really interesting. But she talks about everything in this book. She talks about education, she talks about, like I said, the workplace, she talks about politics, and then she also interweaves a lot of her own personal experiences and some of the just nasty stuff that she had to endure, that she has endured throughout her career as a activist. It's really sad that she has gone through some of the stuff that she's gone through. I highly recommend it if the topic is something that you're interested in. It's definitely eye-opening and I think important. So yes, if you want to check it out, the audiobook is narrated by the author, so that's always cool. So yeah, it was a 4-star read. So the next book that I completed in May was my continuation of the Chronicles of Narnia read that I'm doing, and I read The Horse and His Boy by C.S. Lewis. This is the 5th book if you're reading it in publication order, or if you're reading it in chronological order, it's the 3rd book. So it takes place sort of in a way, after The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, in that same sort of time frame, I guess. And so you have the 4 characters from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe in this, but they're not like the main people. The main character is a boy named Shasta who befriends this talking horse named Bree, and they travel from, I can't remember where they are from, but they're basically traveling to Narnia. So the book doesn't really take place in Narnia because they're kind of on a journey to get there. So yeah, it's kind of a road story, if you will. And this one was okay. I didn't love this one as much. I think part of it was, other than Bree, who I actually really enjoyed, the talking horse, I thought he was pretty funny and I liked him a lot. There wasn't a lot of magic to this story. And so, I don't know, it just didn't feel as like whimsical and stuff to me as the other books have, especially coming off of The Silver Chair, which had some awesome like magical fantasy sort of elements. This one didn't really have anything. And then the other characters, like I said, besides Bree, I wasn't really like loving. I don't know. So overall, this was probably my least favorite of the series so far. I would say this was like a 2.5 star. I'm really hoping that the next book is better, that it has more of those magical elements and things. This one I didn't really love. It was a 2.5 out of 5. Okay, so now we're gonna get to the book that I think just really slowed me down this month and last month. And I think you all know what it is, right? You guys know I was reading Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. A Russian classic, a very large Russian classic, depending on what what is the word? Oh my gosh, depending on what is the word? Oh my gosh, my brain is not working right now. Edition, there we go. Depending on what edition you have, it's anywhere from like 800 pages to 1,000 pages. Whew. And it is about, and this is my first gripe, it's called Anna Karenina, but it's not really about Anna Karenina entirely. Which was my first thing when I first started reading the book. She doesn't show up for a while. You meet other characters before you meet Anna. And I was like, wait a minute, I thought this book was called Anna Karenina, but she is not the main character. I really don't think so. But anyways, it does deal with her though, in a sense. She is a woman of high society, and most of the characters in the book are. And in Anna's case, she starts to have an affair with another man. She's married and has a child, but she starts having an affair with this count, and it has some consequences. But also, it deals with other characters and their relationships, and then it also deals a lot with Russian society at the time. Things were evolving, and Leo Tolstoy put a lot of his opinions about those things into this book, things dealing with politics and farming and just agriculture in general, and also just kind of industrialism, is that the word? And all that kind of stuff is also in this book. And that's what makes the book so long, is that he puts a lot of his big opinions into the story. Where if all that had been taken out, the book would have been probably half the length. This was a long book. It felt long. There were a lot of slow parts in it. But I did enjoy the characters because you meet, like I said, you have Anna and Vronsky. Those are the two star-crossed lovers of the story. You also have her brothers, Stepan, I believe his name was, and his wife. And then you have another couple, Kitty and Levin. And Levin is sort of the character that I think was more of the main character. It definitely seemed like he was on the page more than Anna. And he was the character where you got a lot of Tolstoy's opinions about everything. And his kind of judgments and everything were all kind of made through Levin, the character. So he had a lot of page time as well. So I guess overall I liked the story. It was interesting, though, like I said, some of those editorializing sort of parts were kind of boring to get through, and they were kind of a slog. But when it got to like the characters and the way that they interacted with each other and the relationships and stuff, I did enjoy that. I thought it was good. And I went into this book knowing how the book was going to end. So I already knew the book was going to end a certain way. And I was very curious to obviously see how we got there. And we got there. And then it got to this last part. There's 8 parts in the book. And part 8 was the most useless, boring, pointless thing I've ever read. When we got to the end of part 7 and the thing that I was waiting for happened, I was expecting part 8 to dive a little more into that, to dive into and be a sort of epilogue and kind of show you more how that ending of part 7 affected the other characters and all that stuff, and it did not do that. It spent like 2 sentences doing that, and then it was talking about something completely unrelated that I'm pretty sure nobody cared about but Tolstoy. And so that whole ending just killed me. I was just like, this does not need to be here. And it just went on, and it really just, I did not understand that at all. Did not end how I thought it was going to end in terms of wrapping things up after the big event of part 7. So yeah, that really took the book down a notch for me, big time. And I think I mentioned when I said I was going to read this book, I read this book for the Stacks Book Club, which is run by Tracy, who does the Stacks podcast. Highly recommend her podcast. It's really good. And so it was interesting because she did this book, and then she did an episode of the podcast about this book. And it was just funny because everything that she said about it, I felt the same way. So in the end, I'm glad I read it, And it's one of those classics I can kind of check off and say I've read, but it definitely is not going to go down as a favorite. I will definitely never reread it, that's for sure. I do want to read now though, because again, in doing the Stacks book club, she had to kind of discuss this book. She had Jenny Lee, an author, come on to do the book with her, because Jenny Lee has written a retelling of Anna Karenina called Anna K, and it's set in contemporary, I believe, Manhattan. And it's a YA sort of book, I believe. I believe it's categorized as YA. And so now I'm really interested to read that, because just to kind of see what she does with the story and like what parts she kind of changes and whatnot. Because I don't know, it just sounds kind of fun. Yes, I can say that I finished Anna Karenina. It was fine. It was fine. I gave it 3 stars. I definitely think there are, in terms of big, long, epic sort of classics, I think there are definitely better ones out there, but I don't know. And I think that the title was inaccurate. It should not have been called Anna Karenina, but that's just me. That's my opinion. So anyway, I would say if it's a book you want to tackle, do it, but know that there are some sloggy parts, and that part 8 is not worth your time. So read it if you want. Read it if you want. It was okay for me, 3 stars. And then I finished out the month by reading the book that I chose for my buzzword reading challenge for this month, which was to read a book that had house or home in the title. So I read The House at Riverton by Kate Morton. And this book ended up being, I think, my favorite book of the month. I just finished it today, actually. And this one is a dual timeline story. The timeline in the past it starts in 1914 and takes you through 1925-ish in England. And then there's a present day timeline, which the present day is like, I believe, the late 90s, early 2000s. And it centers around a girl named Grace, who when she is a young girl, she goes to work at Riverton House as a maid and gets really attached to the family and whatnot. And one summer night in 1924, a poet kills himself on the grounds. And so, yeah, big thing happens. And then in the present day timeline, Grace is an old woman. I believe she's 98. And a filmmaker approaches her who is making a film about Riverton and that time period. And because she worked there and all that and knew the family intimately, she asks if she could interview her to kind of, check historical accuracies and things like that. So Grace agrees, and it dredges up all these memories about that time and the suicide that happened. And so you have this mystery element because you want to know, okay, what happened? Because you know right at the get-go that the event happened, but now you're learning how and why. And so this was a very good book. I really, really enjoyed this. What I think I loved the most about it was the sort of upstairs, downstairs kind of vibe it had. It had a very Downton Abbey vibe. So much so that I have started rewatching Downton Abbey. You get the stories, a story from the house servants and everything, and also from the family that they serve, and how they interact together. And it was just so good. And this also takes you through World War I, and how it affected this particular family, and going into like sort of the jazz era of the 20s. And so, yeah, in typical Kate Morton fashion, you had that back and forth in time, you had the mystery element, you had the very rich characters and the big beautiful house. And yeah, I just really loved this. I really did. I would say, I think that The Lake House is still my favorite of the Kate Mortons I have read, but this is a very, very close second. It's almost tied, I think. I really liked this. So if you are a fan of Downton Abbey and have not read The House at Riverton, you have to read this. You will love it. I promise you will love it. And I gave this like 4.5 stars. It wasn't quite a 5. It wasn't quite a 5, but it was close, and I really enjoyed this. Okay guys, so those are the books that I read in May. It was a pretty good month, I think. I had some ups and downs, I think. And I have to say, I'm really glad to just be done with Anna Karenina, because now I feel like my reading hopefully won't feel so bogged down. because that book was bogging me down a little bit. Let me know what you read in the month of May. I would love to know what everybody has been reading. And if you read any of these books, I would love to hear what you thought of them. So that's all I have for today. I hope you guys are having a wonderful week. And I hope that June treats you well. And I will talk with you soon. Thank you so much for watching.